Morning. I'm not particularly good with constraints, as you'll see as I go through the presentation, because I sort of stretched a number of the things that you've heard in the introduction. I didn't do it over 2 terms, I've been doing it over 2 years. I didn't really focus on a project, but more of a way of thinking. But hopefully I'll explain how it fits with the aims of Sinnott as we go through. My role within the school is one of an assistant head, and I have a range of responsibilities, most of which lean more towards discussion, some would say waffle, and less towards Excel spreadsheets. One of the major one of those is outward-facing partnerships. Now, the most obvious partnerships that I might want to look at in that role, you would think, are those that are already set up, are those around your area you can get involved with. That's not what I want to talk about during today. I am part of those, and I do go along to them, and I think they have their role. However, for what I wanted to do with this project, and what I want to bring across in this talk about how outward-facing is a way of thinking, is they're not what creates innovative, new, different ideas. I'm not saying their work is wrong, and I'm certainly not alluding to what the picture behind me seems to suggest as a phrase. The picture behind me links to the projects that or the case study I'm going to talk about, and I'll explain why. Instead, I think that outward-facing is a way of thinking. It should be embedded within everything you do. You might want to think about the partners that you link with on a more ad hoc basis, a much more organic basis. And it's a skill set rather than specific people. And it changes over time, and ideally there'll be a win-win situation. The case study came out of being challenged by the head, and we were sat in a meeting, and he said, right, we've got a pot of money, I want to spend it on IT, but I want to use that money and that IT to transform learning and transform teaching. And what I very quickly decided was that I certainly wasn't the person to answer that. But I could work out roughly what it is that I wanted to achieve. What sort of learning, what sort of teaching, and I'm sure you've seen the Shift Happens presentation, and if you haven't, I'm sure, or if you're not sure you have, the music will remind you. But basically, it points out that we're trying to prepare people for jobs that don't exist, for technologies that aren't invented yet. And therefore, for our students, I felt, independence and creativity was key. And if you're going to have independence and creativity, you've got to have motivation with it. If you don't, they're never going to prepare the best work. Yes, they're working independently, but they're doing the minimum required. They're never going to be creative and get to the pinnacle of what they're able to achieve unless you motivate them. And the problem was that IT, computers, don't tend to achieve that on the whole. They tend to fixate them, almost like the bulb in Bug's life, and much less about creating the best work that they're able to. So I phoned Apple and Google and asked them for some advice. It seemed they might be much more likely to come up with the answer than I would. And they sent me around the country. I visited 7 schools, I visited Apple headquarters, and I couldn't find the answer. I saw some really innovative stuff, but it wasn't quite what I wanted. It didn't transform learning, it didn't transform teaching. So I phoned Apple up and I told them this. And they sent me to Prague, very nice of them. And I went to the Apple Educator Conference in Prague, and here I started to get a handle on what it was I was after. They talked about challenge-based learning. They talked about where the teacher sets the challenge, and after that it's over to the students to set the activity, to set the guiding questions, to set the outcomes. Here's a 20-second example. The challenge that was set was get one of the bands in school signed. All the students did it in different ways. One student put it on a website, told the local radio stations about it. Tim Burton drove through, listened to the track, said, yes, I want that, and it ended up on the Batman movie. The end. Okay, so it was amazing what could be achieved with this challenge-based learning. And I thought, that's what I want. That's what I want to do. But in order to do that, I buy into the idea of how Apple hardware fits with it, and I'll come to that later on. But I want to create an entire environment that sets up this challenge-based idea. And that's where I started talking to RM, who are on that slide as well. And then just for added value, we thought we would do a trial for Apple and a trial for the Department for Education in order to show what the benefits are to learning. And we're doing that by the end of this year. So here's the hardware we put into the room, the challenge-based learning environment. It's not in every classroom, but it's a place where everyone can go to. We put in the MacBooks, we put in iPods, we linked it all to Moodle, we put in its own server so that it worked properly and that all the Apple functionality was there. We put in a green screen, and importantly, and this was something that came out of the conference, we made sure that there was a computer or an iPod for every student. They were very clear about the fact if you want independence, if you want creativity, you can't huddle 3 people around a computer. And so we have invested, and we've done lots of negotiations and able to provide that. We then looked at the environment and we said, well, if students are going to take control of this, the teacher is there as a facilitator or even the best classrooms as a coach, then they need to be able to move the furniture. They need tables that they can flip over and present on and that are interactive. They need seats where the teacher can pull them together. And I've already mentioned the trials we're doing for the DFE and for Apple. So we then, where are we at? We're just at the point where the room's snagged and we're off. Teachers are going in there. We've set up a whole range of teachers to actually run that trial, and it's all just starting to be underway, which is why I've said that we couldn't pull this together in 2 terms, but we have managed to get it up and running for now. Other things that I did during my Sinnott Fellowship, and this shows the way of thinking rather than specific projects. We were running an expedition to Greenland, so we decided that we would pull in some science with University of Portsmouth and Royal Meteorological Society. We brought in falconry for the creative partnerships, and we're using local business links to use their selection centres to prepare our students for interviews. Also, as another longer-term project, we've tried to enhance ourselves as a community school. We've gone out to the council, we've looked to see what they want, we've then pulled together ideas based upon that, and we've raised just over 50,000 in order to put in a whole range of new facilities for the local community. So far, we've put in a dance studio, and we've revamped our drama studio, and we've put in an art exhibition space. Further projects this year that we're putting in are redoing our hard courts and creating a place that's great for our students, but also great for the entire community. So hopefully what you're starting to get a sense of is that everything that I'm doing and everything the school is doing is looking outwards. What does that feel like in school? Well, it's taken a while to get going, but the pace is definitely picking up. And it's really going to have, and is already having, an impact. Teachers are thinking differently about how they might teach. They're being challenged to understand what's being put in front of them and how they can use it. And my real hope is that regardless of what happens at the end of October, regardless of what happens, I hope there is a 3rd set of fellows for the Sinnott Fellowship, but regardless of what happens, it won't make a difference because everybody in the room, hopefully, and everyone that is buying into this is going to go away with a way of thinking rather than a project necessarily they can run in school. Thank you.